Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video. It's going to take us to around the 18th of January. So we've just released the ECMWF 30-day look ahead for Europe and for the UK as well. And big changes with that, starting off pretty mild in the northwest of Europe. But by weeks 3 and 4, taking us to the end of January and the start of February, much colder weather engulfing many parts of Europe. The UK is included in that as well. So we're going to have a look at some other models and see what they've got to say about this period through the middle of January and into the second half of the month. We've had the sudden stratospheric warming, as we know, so we're waiting to get the response to it in the troposphere. What we saw with the ECMWF 30-day look ahead would be in line with what you would expect after a sudden stratospheric warming. But remember, it's only one model, and we're not totally sure whether that is indeed how things are going to play out. But I'm going to talk you through all of the latest developments for today's second video update. We're not looking at the stratosphere today. I thought I'd leave that out of today's video because we have looked at it a lot over recent weeks, and basically things are now beginning to sort of die away there in a way. Though the solar winds are still in reverse and will stay so for the next few days. Gradually, things are, it's time to start looking more at the troposphere, I think, rather than the stratosphere. So that's where the focus is going to be in this particular video update. Right, so get on with it for you right now. We'll start off by having a look at the Arctic Oscillation Observed and Forecast chart. This is based on the GFS ensembles, of course. Now, the black line here tells where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. The red line's at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic Oscillation to go. It's just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. It's not driving anything. It just shows what the atmosphere is doing over the North Pole. So where we are right now is around neutral with the Arctic Oscillation, but we are forecasting the AO to drop into negative territory over the next few days. So when the Arctic Oscillation is negative, you're basically going to have high pressure up over the pole. You're going to have a blocking feature somewhere over the North Pole. Of course, the blocking feature doesn't necessarily have to be in a position to give us cold weather. It might push the cold air down into Canada and North America. It might push it down into Asia, Japan, China, those sort of areas, or parts of Russia. So there's no guarantee just because you've got a negative AO and you've got blocking that we're going to get particularly cold from it. But it is one of the things that we do look for within meteorology to tell us if we've got northern blocking. If we are, then we have to focus on where that northern blocking is going to be sitting. So for the next few days, the AO is going to go into negative territory. Then heading up towards the middle part of the month, this is mid-January just here, it actually goes back towards neutral for a time. But then you'll notice the GFS ensembles are really dropping the AO now. Some of those members of the GFS ensembles are going off a cliff with the Arctic Oscillation. They're going down to a very, very low level indeed. Now, they're outliers, and they're not all doing that at this stage, but definitely some of those GFS ensemble members are producing large amounts of quite serious and intense northern blocking as we're going into the second half of January, particularly through the last week of January. NAO is the same idea, so the black line here tells us where we've been with the NAO, the red line's at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. Again, we're very close to neutral at the moment, so around neutral with the AO, around neutral with the NAO. But a bit of a difference between the two indexes in terms of the forecast of the GFS ensembles, because we are basically lifting the NAO into positive territory as we're going into the middle of January, whereas at the same time, the AO is going into the middle of January negative or certainly no higher than neutral. You will notice towards the end we have got quite a few members of the GFS ensembles starting to dip down towards weekly negative NAO conditions. So possibly, just possibly, right at the very end of the GFS ensembles, this would be kind of like in the 300 to 384 hour time frame. Just possibly some of those GFS ensemble members are starting to shift the pattern in the Atlantic. At the same time, of course, as the northern blocking is really intensifying up over Greenland and the Arctic potentially. So that could be the first signs of a shift within the NAO as well. But this is right at the very extended range of the GFS ensembles, what we see just there. Right at the very extended range. So it is very unreliable. And I want to wait a few more days before I'd say that definitively the NAO is shifting. This is how the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking. We're looking at Oxford today. Now, I've got quite a list of places to look at over the next few updates, over the next few video updates in terms of the GFS ensembles. If you would like your town or city to feature in this section of the video updates when we look at the GFS ensembles, then please let me know. I'll add you to the to-do list at the moment. We've got Oxford today, we've got Cardiff, Barnstaple, Barnstaple, Poole, High Wycombe, Glasgow. So the places to look at are definitely piling up, but we can add your location, your town, your city to this section of the video if you would like us to. As I say, today we're looking at Oxford because someone has asked me to take a look at the GFS ensembles for Oxford. So the red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average for Oxford, and we're pretty cool at the moment. We're around to a little bit below average with the temperature, just having a slight northerly snap. The end of the week and into the weekend, we're going to see the temperatures lifting up. That takes us to the middle of January just there, 15th of January. After that, we've got a definite cooling trend appearing now within the GFS ensemble. So from around the 15th, 16th of January onwards, definite cooling trend. You see most of these ensemble members are dipping quite well now below the red line, quite well below the 30-year temperature average. And there are some ensemble members that are going down to or even below -10 at 850 HPA. These ones just here are going to -10 or going lower than -10 at 850 HPA. They are genuinely cold ensemble members. You get to -10 at 850 HPA in January, it's going to be bitterly cold. The temperature will be struggling to get much above freezing by day. You'll certainly be cold enough to snow in any precipitation, and there'll be hard overnight frost as well. Of course, not all of the ensemble members are getting that low, but most of them now in this sort of third week of January, most of the ensemble members now are going to between sort of -5 and -10. Anyway, 850 HPA. So I think we can say quite definitively now we have got a cooling trend in evidence here through this third week of January. Precipitation-wise, for Oxford, lots of dry weather coming up to the weekend, even the start of next week, but turning more unsettled. So as it turns colder, looks like it's also turning more unsettled as well. And dare I say it, there is the potential, therefore, with colder temperatures and more precipitation, there is the potential for some snow. Temperature anomalies from the 8th to the 16th of January, a little bit milder than average. The weekend will still continue to be quite mild for the UK, for Ireland, for much of Northern Europe. Any change to colder conditions looks like it's beyond sort of the 15th to the 16th or 17th of January. It's in that sort of period where we might start getting a change towards something a bit colder. So certainly for the next week, much milder than average for Northern Europe. Colder than average, though, you'll notice, through much of Southern Europe. Precipitation anomalies from the 8th to the 16th of January, drier than average across the west of Europe, UK, Ireland, France, Spain, Portugal, all coming out drier than average in the week ahead. The central parts of Europe looking a little bit wetter than average there. Here's the all-important charts then. So this is the GFS operational run with high pressure just to our southwest on Friday. We're starting to infiltrate some cloudier and milder air in from off the Atlantic into next weekend. Again, we keep high pressure to the southwest of the UK and Ireland. We maintain those relatively mild westerly winds, but dragging in, no doubt, a lot of cloud. Into next week, turning more unsettled through the week. These areas of low pressure beginning to head in from off the Atlantic as this high pressure is weakening to our south and southwest. So through the second half of next week, we're genuinely unsettled by this point. Low pressure is very close to us. You would expect showers or longer spells of rain as we get to day 10, which is Friday, the 18th of January. Into the extended range, is this operational GFS run going to do anything cold? Well, it has a go, but actually the cold air is kept generally just to our north and east on this GFS operational run. It's certainly having a go at raising some pressure over Scandinavia, but it doesn't raise pressure over Greenland That's how the upper air temperatures are looking on Thursday, the 24th of January. Most of Europe is plunged into the freezer. So it's very, very cold. In fact, it's exceptionally cold across northern and northeastern parts of Europe. Exceptionally cold conditions in many areas from Germany and Scandinavia eastwards. Out in the west, so we continue to be relatively mild on this operational GFS run. If we go back to the ensembles, though, the GFS operational run is this green line just here, this thicker green line. You see, it was just about one of the warmest or mildest ensemble members, really, through the extended range. So it's way above the ensemble mean, which is the white line, and it's way above most of the ensemble members that are going down between -5 and -10. I wouldn't necessarily say it was an outlier, because there are a few other GFS ensemble members that are doing doing something similar to what the operational GFS run are doing. These kind of lines up here, but it was certainly one of the mildest ensemble members within the suite. But it's an option, it's a possibility if it can go wrong to get it cold in the UK, it will do. But we do see very, very cold conditions just to our north and northeast. In fact, if I show you the thickness lines, you'll see something quite unusual. I've got a little bit of 492, that purple line, just there, I've got a little bit of 492 thickness there across towards the Baltic area of northeastern parts of Europe, and the 510 is plunging a very long way south as well, that darker blue line. So really cold air engulfing many parts of Europe by sort of the final week of January, and it's just kept to our east on this GFS run. But obviously with such cold air into Europe, there is the potential for some really cold conditions to come. This is a parallel GFS run, so this will become the main operational GFS very shortly. Again, we start on Friday, high pressure, very close to the coast, but pulling out into the Atlantic, allowing these mild winds to infiltrate in from off the Atlantic as we go into next week. Turns more unsettled. That's a recurring theme within the model output. We break down this high pressure. We don't necessarily break it down, but we certainly weaken it a lot. This high pressure that's been with us since Christmas Eve, and we turn things more unsettled with some rain coming in off the Atlantic and eventually starting to turn rather colder as well as these areas of low pressure begin to take more of a southerly track and the jet stream starts to align itself sort of northwest to southeast in that sort of direction. That's how we look at day 10. Quite unsettled, low pressure close to us, and quite cool for the north, maybe even cold, certainly cold enough the hill snow. Now, the parallel GFS run does eventually take us into a much colder period of weather, so you find heights are rising out to the north and northwest of the country. Low pressure is sinking southwards through Europe. That's turning the wind into the east by 300 hours, Sunday 20th of January. We've got easterly winds probably bringing snow showers into eastern parts of the country, and then we start to set up a bit of a Greenland high to our north. So it turns cold, perhaps even very cold, and unsettled. This area of low pressure is sinking down across the country as the heights are rising and the blocking is increasing up here. So we're setting up a bit of a Greenland block, and we're sending this low pressure southwards across the west of Europe. There's very cold air entrenched into that area of low pressure, with the jet stream on a really southerly track now going from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean. So that looks like it's starting to get itself in towards quite a prolonged sort of cold pattern. There's the upper air temperature, so the severest of the cold air again is across Europe, particularly northern, eastern and northeastern parts of Europe, but we're certainly cold enough here for snow within this area of low pressure that's sinking down across the country. So cold and wintry as we go through the third week into the second week of January, into the final week of January, I should say, with the parallel GFS run. This is how the ECMWF is looking. High pressure just to our west-southwest on Friday. That continues into the weekend as we bring milder air across the UK from the Atlantic around the top of that high pressure. Notice through next week, very unsettled and quite cold with this low pressure, this trough across much of Scandinavia, northeastern Europe. We keep an Atlantic influence through the course of next week, but it does turn more unsettled. Low pressure becoming increasingly influential through the course of next week That's how we finish up at day 10 with the ECMWF operational run. We've got high pressure just to our southwest still. We've got this trough sinking through northern and central parts of Europe, so we're into biting through there. We're just on the periphery of it, and we would need to wait a day or two longer to see whether this would set us up into a prolonged cold spell of weather. The upper air temperatures do look pretty cold by day 10 across the UK. Things are certainly turning colder. Whether that will be sustained cold or just a cold snap, we'd need to wait another couple of days to see. I can show you the ECMWF postage stamps today from the Icelandic Met. So sometimes these are updated, some days these get updated, some days they don't. So that's why I don't show them in the videos all the time. But they have been updated for today. So this is how the ECM ensembles, all 51 ensemble members, are looking at day 10. Which of course is the 18th of January. So we're all pretty much showing the same thing really, which is a trough of, there's 51 ensemble members and we're all showing the same thing, 100%. There's a trough of low pressure to the east of us in terms of the 500 millibar heights. Low pressure is sinking down through Scandinavia, central parts of Europe. We've got the legacy of the high pressure to our southwest just here, and a little bit of blocking appearing quite weakly around Greenland. So this leaves us doing something a bit like that with the flow and with the jet stream. So just on the periphery of cold air. It's not a proper sort of locked-in block pattern, but we are probably, on most of those ensemble members, similar to what the operational ECM is showing, which is very well supported by its ensemble, probably turning things a little bit colder. This is how things look at 2 weeks away. So the operational ECM only goes to day 10, but the ensembles and ensemble members do go to 2 weeks. So this is 360 hours, 23rd of January, and we've got 20 members of the ECM ensembles that have a proper blocking feature. We've got a mid-Atlantic ridge, but it does extend up towards Greenland as well, with this trough of low pressure over and to the east and southeast of the UK. That leaves us pulling in this cold, maybe in very cold, east or northeast winds. Those members of the ECM ensembles could well be bringing snow there as we're up to the 23rd of January. Then we've got another 18 that look like that. They have the mid-Atlantic ridge, which is just there. They don't necessarily get it up towards Greenland as well, but there is a bit of a high pressure feature towards Greenland also. So they're very close to doing what these 20 are doing. These 18 here are very close to doing what these 20 are doing. Again, we've got the trough of below average heights to the east and southeast of the country. They would be pulling winds, primarily would be pulling winds in from a cold northerly or northerly type direction. Some of them might be rolling in slightly milder air from around that ridge in the middle of the Atlantic. But I would think most of those 18 that we have there, most of them would probably be quite cold ensemble members. And then finally, we have on the 23rd of January, another 13 ECM ensemble members that are milder. These ones have below pressure to the north of Scotland. The ridge is kind of like over towards Newfoundland. Let's change the colour. Kind of like over towards Newfoundland in that sort of area. And so these have much more of an Atlantic influence to the air coming in from a west or northwesterly direction. Those wouldn't be particularly wind shear. They wouldn't be mild because the air is coming from the Northern Atlantic, but they wouldn't be particularly cold. But they're a minority option actually between kind of like the 20 that we have just here and the 18 that we have just here. It looks like the ECMWF ensembles are trending more and more towards colder conditions by the end of the 3rd week of January. Have a quick look at the CFS V2. These are 500 millibar heights, broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 8th to the 14th of January. Above average heights in the coming week over, and just to the west of the country, winter really biting in the east of Europe with that trough of low pressure, bringing very cold air down there. We remain close to this ridge, relatively mild, relatively stable. Then to week 2, which is the 15th to 21st of January, with the below average heights backing into Scandinavia, central parts of Europe, the above average heights pulling away from us into the middle of the Atlantic. This is a transitional week where things are starting to turn rather cold as the wind begins to pull down from the north. But it's in week 3 that the blocking really gets unleashed. This is the 22nd to 28th of January, with very intense blocking through the Atlantic and going up to Greenland and up to the Arctic as well. The trough of below average heights is across much of central western Europe. The wind, therefore, is being pulled in from a northeasterly direction. That looks very cold and very wintry from the CFS V2 today as we're going into that final week of January. And then this goes on into the week 4 period, which is the 29th of January to the 4th of February. Again, massive blocking to the north around Greenland, extending back into the Arctic. Below average heights to our south. The wind is coming from an east or northeasterly direction. Again, that looks cold and wintry, potentially very cold, I would have thought, for central, northern and western parts of Europe. Temperature anomalies in the week ahead, the 8th to 14th of January, milder than average, but week 2, this is when it's beginning to transition into a more sort of coldish pattern. So the temperature anomaly falls, it goes a little bit cooler than average in week 2, the 15th to 21st of January. Then week 3, which is the 22nd to 28th of January, much colder than average through the UK and many parts of Central Europe as well, going much colder than average. And then look at this, it goes on into week 4 as well. This is the 29th of January to the 4th of February, colder than average for the UK. We're talking about 2 degrees or so for the UK, colder than average. But through many central and northern parts of Europe, even colder than that, kind of like 3 to 4 degrees colder than average through central and northern parts of Europe. Winter really being unleashed here in the final week of January and the start of February with the CFS V2. And we know this ties in with the ECMWF, so I'll just leave you with this. Again, it's a temperature anomaly that we looked at in the ECMWF 30-day update that we released earlier on. So this is the week 3, this is week 4 for the year, and it's week 3 for our forecast period. Temperature anomaly 21st of January to 27th of January, colder than average in broadly the same sort of areas that CFS V2 is showing it. And then in week 4, again, it's colder than average, broadly the same areas that the CFS V2 has it. So that's where the cold and average temperature anomalies are with CFS V2 from the 29th of January to the 4th of February. This is where the ECMWF shows it from the 28th of January to the 3rd of February. Again, they are very similar, and both models, both the CFS V2 and the ECM, are hinting that we are plunging into the freezer. I couldn't show you the pattern that's causing that with the ECMWF, but I can now, because Michael Ventris, our good friend Michael Ventris on Twitter, Pro-Met forecaster from Weather Services International, tweeted the 500 millibar heights for weeks 3 and 4 earlier on today. This was Michael's tweet, and again, I'll leave the link to Michael Ventris's Twitter in the description at Jabs Weather, so give Michael a follow if you can. ECMWF weekly model update, holding strong with the North Atlantic and North Pole blocking that has been advertised in previous cycles for end of January into early February. This hasn't verified yet, so too early to claim it's correct, but the stability in the forecast is real. Hashtag winter is coming, and these are 500 millibar heights that Michael shared on his Twitter earlier on. So this is week 3. This is taking us from the 21st of January to the 28th of January. And it's blocked. We have the area of above average heights through the middle of the Atlantic going up towards Greenland. So we know that's kind of like what the ECMWF ensembles are showing 2 weeks away, with the below average heights there sinking through northern and central Europe. So this is turning things colder, obviously, and it's in line with what CFS V2 is showing as well. Both sides of the Atlantic looking cold, by the way. There's a deep trough through eastern parts of America as well. So we've got blocking on, we've got cold air on both sides of the Atlantic from that blocking in week 3. And then week 4, 500 millibar heights looking like that, takes us, what is the forecast time frame? So that's the 28th of January to the 4th of February, when we know the model is going for much colder than average conditions across much of Europe. The reason it's doing it is that it has the trough of below average heights through central and western parts of Europe, and then just masses of blocking across Greenland, going back into the North Pole. Again, it's cold on the eastern side of America as well, so both sides of the Atlantic cold from this very block setup, with the trough in on the east of America and into central western parts of Europe. The jet stream looks like that, very southerly tracking jet stream indeed. That's setting up prolonged, very cold and wintry weather for the end of January and into the early part of February. And we've got both of the models in agreement with this. We've got the CFS V2, we've got the ECMWF in agreement. We won't know until late in the week on Friday whether the JMA model is going to be in agreement with this. But certainly it looks like the ECM and the CFS are picking up on a big blocking signal through the final week to 10 days of January and lasting into early February as well. Nothing has happened yet to say that this is definitely how things are going to go. So let's keep our feet firmly on the ground. I know a lot of you are waiting for winter to arrive. Alternatively, a lot of you are probably watching this and you're dreading what you're seeing because you don't want cold weather and snowy conditions. It just depends what you want really out of the weather, whether you think this is a good or a bad thing. But let's remember, nothing has happened yet that says this is definitively how things are going to go. I suspect these models are responding to the sudden stratospheric warming. They've seen the sudden stratospheric warming, they've seen the reversal of the zonal winds, and they've seen the split in the polar vortex at its roots that occurred a couple of days ago. And they are now starting to place the tropospheric response to that stratospheric warming, starting to factor it in and place in the blocking features. But they might be wrong about this. They might be going too over the top with the effects of the sudden stratospheric warming. So until we see clear and consistent signs of this within the week to 10-day model output, which is the GFS, the ECMWF, and the GM, until we start to see definitive signs of this and consistent signs of this blocking within the week to 10-day time frame, I think we need to stay very cautious about it. So let's see. In a few days' time, we should know, certainly for the second half of January, what's going to happen. But interesting times ahead, and we'll be keeping you updated, of course, over the next few days at Gav's Weathers. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.